If you want to bust through genealogy brick walls, you can't just search for clues. Sometimes you have to research. Get it? In this video, we're going to talk about researching children and grandchildren of your brick wall ancestors to try to find clues that can take you back a generation. I want to know, do you do a lot of descendancy research? Let me know in the comments. I would be very interested to know your thoughts. If you are new to Family History Fanatics, welcome. My name is Devin Noel Lee, and we help you understand your DNA, research your family tree, and write ancestor stories along the way, because you gotta put it in a book or into written form if you want your relatives to actually care about their heritage. In any case, I want to call your attention to the description box. If you haven't already, make sure you go and get our free guide for brick wall busting tips that you'll have to try as soon as you are done with this video. In a previous video, we talked about researching death records for clues to bust through our brick walls. And all along the way, we take the clues we find and put them into the research plan. If you haven't watched those videos, be sure to watch them, and you will find the link for all of the show notes and all of the references that I talk about in the description, and most of our show notes are over on our blog. So be sure you get familiar with the description box and our blog. So let's dive into what we're going to do in order to research the children of our ancestors. We're going to utilize my brick wall of John Townley, my fourth great grandfather, who was born in somewhere in New Jersey. He died in Cincinnati in 1890. So the next thing I'm going to do to look for clues by researching the children is I'm going to look at naming traditions. I'm looking at some of these early clues just because they're easy. I've already found the information, or I'm going to utilize the trees of someone else. Oh no, I just said I'm going to utilize the tree of somebody else. Now, trees online are only as good as what people put in them, but there are some times where you can use them and get very, very good clues. So always validate your research. When you're working on a brick wall, I'm showing you the quick and dirty method of getting clues, but know that I'm actually validating all of this other information to the best of my ability. So I'm actually going to go over to Family Search, and I'm going to look in a descendancy view for John Townley. I'm going to expand to the fourth generation, and I'm looking for any kind of naming patterns. We have John and Eveline and an Eliza, and as I'm going through, I start seeing there's an Eveline Woodruff. Okay. Eveline Woodruff would have been named after her grandmother, Eveline Porter. Okay, so that's one clue. We have an Ellsworth Woodruff. Now, Ellsworth Woodruff is his father, and that Ellsworth Woodruff is a relative of Samuel. So there is this habit of passing on names. So now we look at Asa Townley. Back up and coming back down. We have a name of passing on names and passing on surnames. We have an Alfred Spear. Now that's interesting. We'll be showing you that in a minute. Now we have a Joanna, another daughter of John Townley, with a William Osborne and a William Osborne. So they like to pass on our names. Another William Osborne. And we have a Richard Townley Osborne. Now Richard Townley, Joanna has a brother named Richard, and we haven't quite gotten to his name just yet. So Richard Townley passing on names back and forth. Mary passing on names. Here's the brother that I told you about, Richard Townley. And there's an Eveline Townley. So Eveline is named after Eveline Porter. So do you see how this family has a habit of passing down names? So I'm just going to keep going through and see if there's any other names that pop out at me. Eveline, some more Evelines. William Richard. William Osborne, that goes back to a cousin. So you can see the names are passing all around. That's a president's name. John Richard. Okay, so there was John, the grandfather, or the ancestor I'm looking for, the fourth great grandfather. The third great grandfather is Richard, and now we've got John Richard, and then you have Richard Boy, and now we have John Effingham Townley. Well, that's fascinating. So let's go through and look at these naming patterns that I have identified over here on this family. They really like to pass down names. So we have Eveline, back to the mother, Eveline, John's wife, John Woodruff, John Townley. Ellsworth, that was Eliza's son, and that name gets passed down. And then we have Asa Dameron, and we had an Asa Townley, his uncle. So you could just see all over the place, these names are passing back and forth. And I am particularly attracted to this name, John Effingham Townley. Now, if you've never done reverse research, be sure to check out my video on how to do descendancy research. I really want to pay attention to this flow of names, and I'm going to put that in my research report. So I am looking at validating. So I'm just going to have another name, naming traditions. And I have Effingham is the potential father of John. We do know John is my ancestor, and Richard is his son. Richard is his son. Now, then Richard named one of his sons John Richard, so you can see how that name was inherited. And then you can have a John Effingham. So now John, but we're going to pick up this Effingham. Now, you might think to yourself, well, if we go to John Effingham is the son of Martha Boyd. Well, Martha, would she have any, I'm going to switch this from Descendancy Research to fan chart. Would she have any ancestors that were Effinghams in which to inherit their name? Well, the first thing I can see with Martha is, so Carl is from Germany and Bertha is from Prussia. So Prussia, Germany. Effingham is a very, very English name. In fact, there was a Lord Effingham. There's a story we'll talk about a little bit later in the research series. And so Effingham isn't going to necessarily be through this line. Now, he could be from this line over here. Joseph, we just don't know very much about it. If we look at John Richard Townley, we've got John Richard Townley, and they keep passing down their names. And I'm covering this up because I don't want to give the giveaway of where things are going. But as you know, the potential relative is Effingham. So there's greater chance that this John Effingham comes from this line rather than the Martha Boyd line. So the next thing I'm going to do is begin validating the children of John Townley. We'll go back to John and start researching his children. I'm just going to pull out a couple of highlights. So when I research Eliza R. Townley and look at her sources, they aren't going to be any birth records for 1824 because New Jersey didn't keep them at that time. On her marriage record for Samuel Woodruff, it did not identify the parents, where it's quite nice that Samuel had somebody signed so that they could get married because they were a little bit underage and they needed a witness to approve it. But that does not include who her father is, Eliza's father. So there's no clue. It doesn't even include where her birth is and things like that. So there's no clues to the past. The only clue that we might be able to figure out is this A.E. Thomas, minister of the gospel. What religion was that? Could we figure out if there's church records? Were the church records, especially if they're Catholic church records, which would be great, they tell you where people were originally from and the names of their parents and things of that nature. This is a clue to point us to some other records, but the more I research Eliza, the less that I'm able to find anything that will be helpful in isolate anything that's beneficial to the research question of John Townley. And when I look at her internment record, there are no extra clues. It would be great if they would have said where she was born. Now, for the sake of time, I'm not going to go through all of the children of John Townley, but I want to highlight one record that gave me a huge clue to the past. Now, this record is the beginning of the opening of the brick wall for John Townley. So this record is for Asa H. Townley. Asa is the son of John Townley, his oldest son but second child. So Asa Townley right there. Now, Asa died in 1883 and his father died in 1890. So when we look at this record and we look particularly at John Townley, who ordered this record, and you look back at who all is involved in this plot, then you can see John is the dad that is providing the information for this record. Strong evidence that he would know the information that's being put on this record. Now, Asa died in California, Kentucky. That's a new place for me to research. And since he was originally born in New Jersey, I want to pay attention to this line. Elizabeth, New Jersey. I now have a smaller net to cast as to where John and his older children were living. Now, I don't know that John was born in Elizabeth, but I know that at least one of his children was born in Elizabeth. So if I cast a net in the 1830s, it's entirely possible I will find John. That is super exciting. Brick wall busting is not for the faint of heart. And if you ever have trouble accessing records or want to turn your brick wall over to some experienced genealogists, might I recommend Legacy Tree Genealogists. We've featured them here many times on our channel and we highly recommend them. You can find out more about them in the description box. Now remember, every time you find a clue, you need to put it on your research plan. Don't leave home without a research plan. As my friend Elise Scalise-Powell likes to remind me, hope is not a research plan. You need to be meticulous and methodical. So I'm going to take information that I gathered from researching the children and add them to my research plan. Now on my research plan, I have mentioned the internment record for Asa Townley and that we now have a birthplace for John. Now I can go and update another spot. Who are his parents? And I can come here and put my working hypothesis. Effingham Townley, based on the naming traditions and based on John's internment record, which his son likely put the information out, and then possibly from Elizabethtown, New Jersey. So what do you think about the theories so far? Where would you research next on this quest to break through a brick wall? I hope you'll share your thoughts in the comment section below. But to continue watching videos in this brick wall busting educational and application series, check out that video right there. And then if you have watched all of those videos, check out this one, which has been selected based on your interests.